Hello, my name's Lesley Atherton and this is my short story called She's the One. She was the one. She's small and weak with short dark hair and clear olive skin, small perky breasts and curved hips. That's how they have to be, as there's no compromise for me. I checked again and she was perfect. No makeup. She wore her hair loose and didn't paint her nails. She even wore the right clothes, blue jeans, pale t-shirt and ankle boots. She was perfect, and I knew it as soon as I saw her on the train and stared at her from under my glasses. I had to have her. I followed her when she left the train and followed from a distance. I watched her shoulders heave as she swapped her heavy rucksack from one shoulder to another, and I saw her wince as her tiny feet, nothing more than a size 2 surely, stepped into a deep puddle. Of course I knew she would be mine. Even better, she hadn't seen or been aware of me, as she'd been talking on her phone. That was a down point. When she was mine, I would have to remove her phone, all the better to keep her pure. She knew where she was going too. I could tell this as she didn't look at road signs or check the traffic direction. That was good. It meant she was local. We hadn't been walking for long, both caught up in the commuter throng, when she turned into a driveway. I held back, breathless, as she pulled a set of keys from her coat pocket and let herself in. Good, that meant there was a chance she was alone in the house. The front of the house was suddenly illuminated through her living room window, and I saw the girl facing the window and still listening on her phone. Excellent. Nobody had come to greet her, meaning my little angel was on her own. I removed myself from the prickly shrub, walked up her path, knocked on the door and waited. As soon as I opened the door, I immediately knew something wasn't quite right. It was one of those instinctive feelings, the kind you get when you aren't concentrating, but you sense the danger anyway. I was distracted on the train, as usual, because I was on the phone with Emily. She's pretty much the neediest friend I've ever had, but she's always there for me when I need her, so I'm always there for her. You know how it is with Emily, I'm sure. We all have friends like her. She was having the usual problems with Scott, and she was going on about him and whether he was cheating on her, or whether she should cheat on him to teach him a lesson. I was getting bored of her chattering, to be honest. But she was my best friend and my workmate, so I listened and made occasional responses like, yes, and really. And then I got off the train and walked home the same as usual. The walk only takes a couple of minutes, and that's why I get the train everywhere, despite the cost. I mean, it's really dear, but it isn't too bad with a weekly pass. Work had been busy. We'd had 11 new clients that day, and that meant extra meetings and form filling and lots more hassle than usual. 11 was a lot, and we were congratulating ourselves on our cleverness at jobs well done. That's another reason why I was distracted, and why I didn't notice anyone trailing me. The police told me later that the man had followed me from the station, but I'd had no idea. I don't normally listen to music on the headphones because I feel vulnerable, but it somehow felt different talking to Emily. I felt safe and befriended. So I let myself into the house and turned the lights on. Then I put my phone on loudspeaker so I could still chat to Emily while I was lighting up my first indoors cigarette of the day. It's my guilty pleasure, allowing myself to sit on the settee, inside in the warm and dry, and lighting up a non-soggy smoke in silence and solitude. Bliss. Anyway, there was this knock at the door, so obviously I told Emily to wait a minute while I went to answer it. At the door was this kind of scraggy guy, who was very tall with shoulder-length greasy hair and a weird droopy moustache. He hadn't shaved for a little while and smelled mucky. Not like a tramp, just like someone who hadn't bothered for a few days. I stood at the door just looking up at him. He looked down at me, not smiling and not speaking either. We stood for a few seconds and I took a drag of my cigarette. Finally he said something. "That's a nasty habit," he sneered. He'd knocked on my door to tell me that. Obviously I wasn't sure how to respond, and I just wanted him to go away so I could carry on talking to Emily. But it turned out that I didn't need to say anything. The man took a quick look around to make sure there was nobody watching and pushed me roughly back into the house, shoving me up against the wall. He said, "Hello, my angel." His words seemed sweet, but it was obvious he didn't have sweet intentions towards me. He wanted to hurt me, rape me maybe, or even kill me. I couldn't think for a few moments, but then I realised I had a readily available weapon. Though he was pinning me down, I still held on to the glowing B&H. All I needed to do was to get my right hand free. I yanked my knee up between his legs, clumsily and without much force, and as he stumbled, my hand came free and I pressed my cigarette onto his eyelid. The revolting man screamed and struggled, but I'd done my bit. He'd be hard pushed explaining that to anyone, whatever the outcome of our encounter would be. But what the repulsive mustachioed man did not know, because there was no way at all of him knowing, was that yes, I worked in an office during daylight hours. But during the evenings I worked in clubs. For 10 years I'd perfected my act as an artiste, performer and contortionist. Skinny I may have been, and small and delicate looking too, but I was very definitely the wrong person for him to pin down. Under his rough-skinned grasp I writhed and wriggled, and his ageing strength became no match for my muscular flexibility. Once away from him I kicked and punched till he fell to the ground, and within less than a minute I was out of my door shouting and screaming for assistance. A passer-by, a middle-aged man, probably the father of an adult child my own age, rushed towards my screams, and between us we removed the shocked and mustachioed intruder from my hallway, throwing him onto the pavement, then tying his hands with dog lead and silk scarf. It didn't shake me, as I've dealt with far worse on the stage with the drunken men and hecklers who wonder at my flexibility and how I'd wrap my legs round them and perform my act for them alone. I just phoned the police, and they took the sad sicko away.